Son, can you help her? Sheikh protects Waitress from harassers. The next day, something incredible happens. Let me know what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments, and tell me what city you're watching from. I'd love to know if you enjoyed my story and get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The aroma of cardamom and cinnamon floated through the conditioned air of the oasis, mingling with the discreet murmurs of the last customers of the night. Isabella Rossi adjusted her apron for the 10th time that hour, a nervous habit she had developed in recent days whenever she noticed the insistent stares of Rick Sterling and Chad Peterson. The two businessmen had been occupying a table near the counter for over 2 hours, and she felt the weight of their whispered comments and lewd laughter like a heavy shadow on her shoulders. At 27, Isabella had learned to navigate the world with the quiet dignity her seamstress mother had taught her in rural Ohio. Every move she made through the restaurant was calculated, professional, but her brown eyes revealed the tension she tried to hide. The oasis was more than a job for her. It was her bridge to a better future, the means by which she sent money to her parents and built her independence in the metropolis of New York City. Across the room, at a private table decorated with a small bronze lamp that cast a golden light on the embroidered fabric covering it, Gaiden Al-Hamad watched his mother with the respectful affection he always had. Amira Al-Hamad, at 68, maintained the elegant posture of someone who had commanded a family for decades. But her dark eyes shone with the simple joy of being at the oasis, where the flavors and aromas brought her memories of a youth lived between Beirut and New York. "This place reminds me of my grandmother's house," Amira murmured, delicately touching the gold necklace she never took off. The same essence of za'atar in the air, the same care in every detail. Gaiden nodded, though his attention was constantly diverted to the waitress, who served them with a cordiality that went beyond professional. There was something about Isabella that intrigued him. Perhaps it was the respectful way she pronounced the Arabic words she had learned, or the way her eyes lit up when Amira shared stories about the spices that seasoned the dishes. At 35, Gaiden had developed a keen instinct for distinguishing genuine interest from performance, and everything about Isabella seemed authentic. "She's special, isn't she?" said Amira, following her son's gaze. Her voice carried that maternal wisdom that can see what even one's own children don't realize about themselves. "Who?" Gaiden feigned distraction, but the slight blush on his cheeks betrayed that he knew exactly who his mother was talking about. "The girl who serves us. Isabella, isn't that her name? She has a different light, and you, my son, can't stop looking at her." Gaiden was about to answer when a sudden movement in his peripheral vision alerted him. Isabella was walking towards the back of the restaurant, carrying an empty tray, when Rick stood up from the table and followed her, with Chad close behind. There was something in the two men's posture that set off all of Gaiden's internal alarms. The way they walked, how they looked around to make sure no one was paying attention, how their expressions changed from falsely cordial to predatory. "Excuse me," Gaiden murmured to his mother, already getting up, but Amira held him by the arm. "Wait. Let's see what happens first." In the back of the restaurant, near the entrance to the storerooms, Isabella tried to maintain her professional composure as Rick blocked her way back to the main dining area. "Come here, beautiful. Why the rush?" "We just want to talk," Rick said, his voice slurred with alcohol. Chad positioned himself on the other side, creating a human barrier. "Please, I need to get back to work. Customers are waiting." Isabella tried to get around the two men, but they moved to block her path. "Relax, babe. Nobody's going to miss you for a few minutes." Chad laughed, reaching out to touch Isabella's face. "We already talked about this. You know we can be very generous with someone who's receptive." "I've already said I'm not interested." Isabella stepped back, her voice trembling but firm. please let me pass. Oh, it's not going to be like that. Rick grabbed Isabella's arm forcefully. You act all innocent, but we see how you look at us. You're just playing hard to get. It was at that moment that Amira, who had gotten up to go to the restroom, witnessed the scene. Her eyes widened in horror and indignation, and she turned immediately to Caden, who was already on his feet, alert. Son, can you help her? Amira's question came out as an urgent whisper, but it was laden with all the moral authority she had cultivated over decades. Caden needed nothing more. In 3 long strides, he was behind the 2 men, his physical presence filling the narrow space like a storm about to break. Even in silence, something in the energy he emanated made Rick and Chad turn, still holding Isabella by the arms. Let her go. Now. Caden's voice was low, controlled, but carried an authority that made the air around them seem denser. Hey man, stay out of it. It's just a joke. Chad tried to maintain a defiant tone, but his voice faltered slightly as he met Caden's piercing gaze. It didn't look like a joke to me. Caden took a step forward, and his imposing height cast a shadow over the 2 men. And apparently, it's not a joke to her either. Rick, emboldened by drink and arrogance, made the mistake of not letting go of Isabella. Look here, you Arab prince. This is none of your business. Why don't you go back to your table and... The sentence was cut short as Caden, in a fluid motion that revealed years of martial arts training, grabbed Rick's wrist with a precision that made the man groan in pain and release Isabella immediately. Chad tried to intervene but found himself pinned against the wall, Caden's forearm pressing gently but firmly against his chest. You will leave here now, Caden said, his voice still controlled, but with a coldness that made both men understand there was no room for negotiation. You will pay your bill, you will walk out the front door, and you will never come back here. And if I find out that you have bothered this young woman or any other woman anywhere, you will discover that I have a very long memory and enough resources to make your lives very complicated. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Rick and Chad's heavy breathing. They looked at Caden, weighed their chances against this mountain of muscle and determination, and made the only sensible choice left to them. This isn't over, Rick muttered, but he was already retreating toward the main dining room. Yes, it is, Caden replied simply. It's exactly like this. When the 2 men disappeared, leaving only the echo of their empty threats and the sound of cash being thrown on the table before a hasty exit, Isabella and Caden found themselves face to face in a silence charged with meaning. She was still trembling slightly, her hands clenched against her apron, but her large, expressive eyes stared at him with a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and something deeper that neither of them could name. Are you okay? Caden asked, his voice now soft, a complete contrast to the threatening tone he had used moments before. I am. Isabella nodded, still processing what had happened. Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. You don't need to thank me, Caden interrupted gently. Any decent person would have done the same thing, but they both knew that wasn't true. The restaurant was full of people who had seen Rick and Chad follow Isabella, and only Caden had acted. There was something in him that went beyond common decency, an instinctual protectiveness, a sense of justice that seemed to flow in his veins like an ancestral inheritance. In the 3 days following the incident at the restaurant, Caden found himself thinking about Isabella with a frequency that surprised him. During business meetings in his downtown Manhattan office, between the marble columns and the windows offering a panoramic view of the city, his mind would wander to those brown eyes that had looked at him with a mix of vulnerability and strength. There was something about her that challenged all the women he had known before, an authenticity that contrasted with the world of appearances and interests that had always surrounded him. Amira had noticed the change in her son since that night. Caden had always been a man of few words, but now he would get lost in contemplative silences that she recognized well. It was the same distant look her late husband had when something truly important occupied his thoughts. "You should go back to the restaurant," she suggested one Thursday morning as they had breakfast on the terrace of their Upper East Side apartment. The view of the city awakening under the first rays of sun created an almost cinematic atmosphere, but Caden seemed oblivious to the beauty around him. "Why?" he asked, trying to sound casual while flipping through a financial newspaper without really reading it. "To check if those men have come back to bother the girl. It's our moral responsibility, isn't it?" Amira smiled with the shrewdness of someone who knows the human heart better than its owners. Caden looked up from the paper and met his mother's understanding smile. "You're trying to manipulate me, Mother. I'm being practical. If you're worried about her, and I know you are, then go there and see how she is. It's as simple as that." That same afternoon, Caden parked his black Mercedes in front of the Oasis. It was an unusual time for dinner, but not for coffee. When he entered the restaurant, he was greeted by the familiar aroma of spices and the soft sound of instrumental Arabic music. Isabella was arranging tables near the window, and when she saw him, her eyes lit up in a way that made his heart involuntarily speed up. "Good afternoon," she said, approaching with a smile that seemed genuinely happy to see him. "Didn't your mother come today?" "No. I came alone today," Caden replied, noticing how musical her voice sounded, even in the simplest words. "I wanted a coffee, and I wanted to know how you are." Isabella indicated a table near the counter, the same one he and Amira had occupied 3 nights before. As she prepared the Arabic coffee with the precision of someone who had learned each movement out of necessity and perfected it out of pride, Caden watched how she moved. There was a natural grace in every gesture, an economy of motion that spoke of efficiency learned through adversity. "Those men haven't come back," she said, placing the delicately decorated porcelain cup in front of him. "And the manager said they are no longer welcome here. Good. They shouldn't bother you or anyone else." Isabella hesitated for a moment, then sat in the chair across from him. It was a bold move for an employee, but something about Caden's presence made her feel that the normal rules didn't apply between them. "Can I ask you something?" she said, nervously fiddling with the small gold necklace she wore. "Why did you do that? I mean, a lot of people saw what was happening, but only you." "Because it was the right thing to do," Caden answered simply, but then added something that surprised him with its honesty. "And because I can't stand to see someone being disrespected like that, especially you." The "especially you" hung in the air between them like an unplanned confession. Isabella felt her face heat up, and Caden realized he had revealed more than he intended. "Did you grow up in the States?" Isabella asked, changing the subject but not looking away from him. "I was born here, but I was raised between 2 worlds. My grandparents came from Lebanon in the 40s, and my family has always made a point of keeping the traditions alive. And you, where did you come from?" "Ohio. A small town where everyone knows everyone. I came here 9 years ago, right after finishing high school. My parents wanted me to stay, to marry the boy next door and follow the path all the girls in town follow. But I wanted more. And did you get what you wanted?" Isabella laughed, a sound Caden found more melodious than any music he had ever heard. "I don't know yet. Some days I think so, other days I think I just traded one kind of limitation for another. But at least here, the limitations are my choices, you know? No one decides for me." Caden understood exactly what she meant. He also lived between expectations and personal choices, between the weight of tradition and the desire for self-determination. The difference was that his limitations came with privileges Isabella had never had. "What did you do before working here?" he asked. "I worked in a bakery, then a clothing store, until I got this job. The owner of the Oasis, Mr. Fareed, gave me a chance when no one else would. He said I had kind eyes, and that was important for someone who works with the public. Since then, I study Arabic in my free time, read about the culture, try to understand the customs. It's a fascinating world. Why did you get interested in Arab culture? Honestly, at first it was just to be better at my job, but then I realized there's a richness there that I had never known. The poetry, the philosophy, the way you view hospitality. It's different from everything I knew growing up. My family is simple, direct. We didn't have time for elaborate rituals or philosophical conversations. Here, I discovered that those things can feed the soul as much as the body. Caden was silent for a moment, processing her words. Most people he knew saw Arab culture as exotic or outdated, but Isabella spoke of it with a respect that found a parallel in genuine passion. It was rare to find someone who understood that traditions weren't prisons, but roots that could nurture growth. "You read Arabic poetry?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Some translated poems. Khalil Gibran is my favorite. The Prophet changed my way of seeing many things. There's a passage about love that—" She stopped, realizing she might be talking too much. "Which passage?" Isabella hesitated, then recited from memory. "When love beckons to you, follow him, though his ways are hard and steep." I always thought love was something that happened to other people. But Gibran writes as if it were a force of nature, something you don't control, you just accept or reject. Caden felt something move within him, a deep recognition of the words she had chosen to share. There was something prophetic in the quote, as if Isabella were describing exactly what was happening between them at that moment. "And you? What do you accept, and what do you reject in your life?" she asked, with a boldness that surprised her. The question caught Caden off guard. No one had ever asked him something so direct, so intimate. His life had always been shaped by the expectations of others, of family, of the community, of business. The idea of accepting or rejecting based on his own desires was almost revolutionary. "I have always accepted the responsibilities that came with my last name," he said slowly. "Leading the family, expanding the business, preserving traditions. As for what I reject—" He paused, looking directly into her eyes. "I'm beginning to reject the idea that these responsibilities must completely define who I am or who I can love." The word love escaped before he could censor it, and they both felt its weight in the air. Isabella lowered her eyes, but not before Caden saw the blush that spread across her cheeks. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't?" Isabella looked up again, and there was a new courage in her eyes. "You just made me think that maybe I'm not the only one here who feels that some rules are made to be questioned." At that moment, as the afternoon sun filtered through the restaurant's linen curtains and created golden patterns on the table between them, Caden understood that he had crossed an invisible line. It was no longer just attraction or curiosity, it was recognition. Isabella wasn't just a beautiful woman who had aroused his protective interest. She was someone who understood the complexities of living between worlds, someone whose intelligence and sensitivity complemented aspects of himself he didn't even know existed. "Isabella," he said, his voice lower now, more intimate, "I would like to see you outside of here, not as a customer and waitress, but as—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "As two adults who want to get to know each other better," she completed, her smile shy but hopeful. "Exactly." The moment was interrupted by the arrival of another customer, and Isabella got up to serve them. But before she walked away, she leaned slightly toward Caden. "Saturday's my day off," she whispered. "I usually walk in Central Park in the morning." Caden smiled, feeling something like hope grow in his chest. "What time?" 9 in the morning, near the lake." And so, between the aroma of cardamom and the unspoken words that floated like promises in the air, two worlds began to approach each other in a way that would forever change both of their lives. Saturday dawned with a clear sky that promised a perfect day in New York City, a rarity in a city where the sun often competes for space with pollution and heavy clouds. Isabella woke up before her alarm, her heart beating at a rapid pace that had nothing to do with her usual morning run. She chose a simple but careful outfit: dark jeans, a white cotton blouse that enhanced her olive skin, and comfortable sneakers for the walk. Looking at herself in the small mirror of her East Village apartment, she tried to control the anxiety that was growing in her chest like a storm about to break. Caden, for his part, had slept poorly. He had spent the night questioning the wisdom of what he was about to do. His life had always been governed by unwritten but unbreakable rules: marriages within the Arab-American community, relationships that strengthened family ties and preserved centuries-old traditions. Meeting Isabella outside of a professional context was a transgression that could have consequences extending far beyond his personal feelings. But when he arrived at Central Park a few minutes before 9 and saw Isabella sitting on a bench near the lake, feeding ducks with pieces of bread she had brought from home, all his hesitations dissolved like morning mist. There was something deeply touching in the image of her there, alone but not lonely, interacting with urban nature with the same delicacy with which she treated the restaurant's customers. "Good morning," he said, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. Isabella turned and smiled, a smile that seemed to light up the whole morning. "Good morning. I thought maybe you wouldn't come." "Why did you think that?" "Because during the week I had time to think, and I realized we come from very different worlds. Maybe you came to the same conclusion." Caden sat next to her on the bench, maintaining a respectful distance, but feeling the energy emanating from her presence like an irresistible magnetic field. "It's true, we are from different worlds," he agreed. "But that doesn't mean we can't create a world of our own." Isabella felt her heart race at those words. There was an implicit promise in them, a possibility she hadn't dared to fully contemplate. They began to walk along the park's paths, passing families having picnics, morning joggers, and elderly couples who seemed to have discovered the secret to growing old together. The conversation flowed naturally, as if they were old friends reuniting after a long separation. "Tell me about your childhood," Caden asked, genuinely interested in understanding the roots that had shaped the extraordinary woman walking beside him. It was simple, but full of love. Isabella smiled at the memory. "My father, Leo, spends his days with grease under his fingernails, but he always found time to teach me math at the kitchen table. He said education was the only inheritance no one could ever take from me. My mother, Maria, sews wedding dresses for the women in town, and every stitch she makes is like a prayer for that marriage to be happy. Do they approve of you being here in New York? They worry." Isabella paused to watch a heron fishing quietly at the edge of the lake. "Especially my mother. She thinks a single young woman shouldn't live alone in a big city. But they're also proud. I'm the first in the family to go to college. You're a student? Education at CUNY, night classes. I want to be a teacher, work with children. I believe that education can break cycles, you know. That a child who learns to dream big can transform not only their own life, but the life of an entire family." Caden found himself admiring not just Isabella's physical beauty, but the beauty of her dreams. There was something refreshing about being near someone who saw the world through a lens of possibility rather than limitation. "And you?" she asked. "What was it like growing up as the heir to a business empire?" "Complicated," Caden laughed without much humor. "My father, may he rest in peace, always reminded me that I wasn't just building my own life, but carrying the weight of 3 generations. When I was 18 and wanted to study architecture, he patiently explained that business administration would be more useful to the family. When I fell in love with literature in my early 20s, he bought me books, but made it clear that hobbies don't build fortunes." Do you resent him for it? No, Caden reflected carefully before answering. He did what he believed was best for me and for the family. But sometimes I wonder who I would be if I had had the freedom to find out for myself. They stopped on a small bridge that crossed an artificial stream, and Isabella leaned on the stone parapet. The sun filtered through the leaves of the trees, creating a pattern of light and shadow that danced on her face. "Can I ask a personal question?" she said, hesitating. "Of course. Why did you never get married? I mean, you must have had many opportunities, many interested women." Caden was silent for a moment, watching the ducks swimming lazily in the water below them. It was a question that bothered him because the answer revealed a wound he tried to keep hidden. "There was someone," he said finally. "Layla Al-Jamil. Our parents arranged an engagement when we were in our early 20s. It was what was expected. Two traditional families, compatible assets, preservation of culture. For 2 years, I tried to convince myself that it was love, or at least could become love with time. What happened? I found out she was in a relationship with another man, a cousin who lived in the United States. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a complete sham. She was with me because it was convenient, because it was what her family wanted, but her heart was always somewhere else. When I confronted our parents about it, they suggested I overlook it, that successful marriages were based on compatibility, not passion." Isabella felt a wave of anger on his behalf. "And you accepted that?" "No. I broke off the engagement, causing a scandal that reverberated throughout our community. Since then, I've been extremely cautious with relationships. I'd rather be alone than be with someone who doesn't truly love me. It can't be easy, living with so much mistrust." "It isn't." Caden looked directly into her eyes. "Until now." The weight of those 2 words hung between them like a confession that changed everything. Isabella felt her cheeks flush, but she didn't look away. "Caden, I need you to know that I have no illusions about who I am or where I come from. I don't have an influential family. I don't have money. I don't have social connections. If you're looking for someone to impress your community—" "Stop," he interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. "Do you think I care about any of those things after spending 3 years of my life with someone who had all of that, but had no character? You have something that is infinitely rarer and more valuable. You are genuine. In a world full of people wearing masks, you are authentically yourself." At that moment, a group of children ran across the bridge, laughing and chasing a ball that had gotten away, momentarily breaking the intensity of the moment. They smiled, watching the childish spontaneity, and then continued walking. "There's something you need to know about me too," said Isabella when they reached a quieter area of the park. "I'm not completely inexperienced in relationships, but I'm also not someone who gives herself away easily. There was a man in Ohio, Mike, whom I dated for 3 years. When I decided to come to New York, he promised to follow me, said he loved me, that we would build a life together here. Did he come? No. 6 months after I got here, I heard from a friend that he had married the daughter of the owner of the garage where he worked. Apparently, it was a better opportunity than following a dreamy girlfriend to the big city. Caden felt a pang of anger against a man he didn't know, but who had hurt the woman walking beside him. "I'm sorry. Don't be. I learned something important from that. That promises are easy to make when they cost nothing. What matters are actions, the difficult choices people make when something really matters to them." They arrived at a small outdoor cafe within the park, and Caden suggested they stop for a drink. While they waited for their drinks, coffee for him, orange juice for her, Isabella observed how he interacted with the waiter. There was a natural politeness in him, a courtesy that was not performative, but genuine. Even though he was clearly from a much higher social class than the employee, Caden treated him with respect and kindness. "Can I make an embarrassing confession?" said Isabella when the waiter walked away. "Please, The first night you came to the restaurant with your mother, before all that trouble with the men, I had already noticed you. There's something about your presence that I can't explain. It's like you occupy space in a different way than other people. And when you stood up to defend me, I thought maybe it was fate. Do you believe in fate? I believe that some people come into our lives exactly when we need them, in the way we need them. And you? She asked, nervously playing with the straw of her juice. Caden contemplated the question as he watched her face, the expressive eyes that seemed to reflect every emotion she felt, the mouth that smiled even when she was nervous, the way a lock of hair stubbornly fell across her forehead. I always thought fate was an excuse people used for not taking responsibility for their choices, he said slowly. But now I think maybe there are encounters that are bigger than coincidence. The sun was stronger now, and the park was beginning to fill with families enjoying the weekend. Somewhere in the distance, someone was playing a guitar, and the sound of the music mingled with the laughter of children and the murmur of conversations. "Isabella," Caden said, his voice filled with an emotion he didn't try to hide, "I would like to keep seeing you. Not just today, but regularly. I know it's complicated. I know there will be obstacles, but I also know that I don't want to let this pass without fully exploring what it could be." Isabella felt tears forming in her eyes, not of sadness, but of a joy so intense it couldn't fit inside her without overflowing. "I want that too," she whispered, "more than I should want." 3 months had passed since that first meeting in the park, and what began as casual encounters had turned into something neither of them could deny or hide any longer. Caden and Isabella saw each other whenever possible. She, during her breaks at work, he making excuses to leave the office early. They were stolen conversations in discreet cafes, quiet walks through streets where no one knew them, text messages exchanged in the early hours when the longing became unbearable. But secrets have a life of their own, and theirs was growing beyond what they could control. The bomb exploded on a rainy Thursday when Layla Al-Jamil arrived unexpectedly in New York. Caden learned of her arrival through a call from his mother, who could barely hide the excitement in her voice. "She's different, Caden," Amira said on the phone, "more mature, more elegant. She said she definitively broke up with that man in the United States and that she wants to talk to you. Maybe this is the second chance you both deserve." Caden felt his stomach clench. Layla represented everything that was expected of him: classic Arab beauty, a traditional family, the unconditional approval of his community. It was the easiest path, the safest, the most predictable. But when he tried to imagine himself with her, the only thing he could see was Isabella's face, her honest eyes, her smile that warmed places in his soul he didn't even know existed. That same afternoon, Isabella was facing her own storm. Mike showed up at the Oasis without warning, more elegant than she remembered, wearing a suit that surely cost more than her monthly salary. Apparently, the arranged marriage in Ohio had brought him not only a wife, but also a comfortable position in her family's business. "You look beautiful, Bella," he said, using the nickname only he knew. "New York has been good to you. What are you doing here, Mike?" she asked, trying to keep her voice professional as other waiters watched the conversation curiously. "I came for you. My marriage. It was a mistake. A practical decision that cost me the only woman I ever truly loved." Isabella felt a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You had 3 years to make that decision. You chose financial security, and I've regretted it every day since." Mike leaned over the counter, lowering his voice. "Bella, I know I made a terrible mistake, but I can fix it now. I'm getting a divorce. I have enough resources to give us a comfortable life. We can start over." "No." The answer came out firmer than Isabella expected. "There is no us anymore, Mike. That door closed the day you chose someone else. It's because of him, isn't it?" Mike dropped the mask of regret, revealing something darker. That rich Arab guy who's been hanging around you, do you think he's going to marry a waitress? You're a diversion for him, Bella. When it comes time to really get married, he'll choose a woman from his own class. Mike's words hit Isabella like a punch to the gut because they echoed her own deepest fears. She knew Caden felt something real for her, but she also knew that feelings weren't always enough to overcome centuries of tradition and social expectation. That night, Caden went to his mother's house for dinner, where Layla was waiting for them in a navy blue dress that enhanced her Mediterranean beauty. She was indeed more mature, more sophisticated, and when she smiled at him, Caden could see the woman he could have loved under different circumstances. "Caden," she said after dinner, when Amira left them alone in the living room, "I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I caused a lot of pain. But these years away have made me realize that I made the biggest mistake of my life when I chose another man. Layla." "Let me finish, please." She approached him, her dark eyes shining with restrained tears. "I was young, confused. I thought passion was more important than compatibility. But I've learned that building a life with someone requires much more than emotional intensity. It requires shared values, common goals, a solid foundation. We have that, we always have." Caden looked at her and saw a beautiful, intelligent woman who genuinely believed what she was saying. In many ways, she was right. They shared a cultural language, a mutual understanding of family expectations, a future that would be approved by everyone around them. "What if I told you there's someone else?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Then I would say you deserve to explore your feelings completely before making a decision that will affect the rest of your life." Layla surprised him with her maturity. "But I would also say that when you're done exploring, I hope you'll remember that I'll be here, offering something solid and lasting." 3 days later, Caden and Isabella met at their usual spot, a small cafe far from the neighborhoods where either of them could be recognized. But something had changed between them. There was a tension in the air that didn't exist before, an acute awareness that the outside world was pressing in on their boundaries. "Mike showed up at work," Isabella said abruptly, unable to find a more delicate way to broach the subject. Caden felt his jaw muscles tighten. "And a nothing. I sent him away, but the things he said." She hesitated, nervously fiddling with her coffee cup. "Caden, I need to know if what we have is real to you, or if I'm just an interesting experience before you do what everyone expects. How can you ask that?" There was genuine pain in his voice. "Because Layla is back, isn't she?" Isabella faced him directly. "And because sometimes, when we're together, I see you fighting against something bigger than both of us." Caden was silent for a long moment, organizing thoughts that felt too heavy for words. "It's true, Layla is back. And it's true that our community, my family, expects me to marry someone like her. But it's also true that since I met you, I can't imagine my life with anyone else. Imagining isn't the same as choosing," said Isabella, her voice trembling but determined. "Caden, I can't keep living in the shadows, hiding as if I'm something you're ashamed of. If you really want me, you'll have to choose me openly. And if you can't do that, you need to let me go now, before this completely destroys us." The ultimatum hung between them like a sword about to fall. Caden knew she was right, that they couldn't keep existing in an emotional limbo that hurt them both. But making the decision she was asking for meant defying not only family expectations, but potentially sacrificing relationships that had shaped his entire life. "I need time," he said, hating himself for sounding like a coward. "When?" Isabella asked, her tears finally overflowing. "When will you know? Because I can't wait indefinitely while you decide if I'm worth it." "1 week," Caden said, the decision coming out of him like a promise. "In 1 week, you'll have your answer. And whatever my choice is, I promise it will be final." That week, Caden lived like a man torn between two irreconcilable worlds. He had dinner with Layla, learned about her prospects for the future, heard her plans for a life that sounded comfortable and respectable. He had long conversations with Amira, who didn't hide her approval of a possible reconciliation. He met with community elders who spoke of preserving traditions and the importance of marriages that strengthened cultural ties. But every night, alone in his room, Caden found himself thinking of Isabella, of the way she laughed when he told stories of his childhood, how her eyes shone when they discussed books they had both read, how she made him feel not just desired, but understood on levels he had never experienced before. On the last day of his week of reflection, Caden visited his father's grave. It was there, kneeling on the well-kept cemetery grass, that he had the revelation that would change everything. "Father," he whispered to the marble headstone, "you always taught me about honor, about responsibility, about making the right choices even when they are hard. But you also taught me that a man who cannot protect and honor the woman he loves is not a real man. Isabella makes me want to be a better man, not despite my traditions, but through them. She understands the values of family, of loyalty, of hard work. She may not have been born into our culture, but she lives the principles you taught me." The next morning, Caden arrived at the oasis an hour before opening. Isabella was there, setting tables for the day, moving with the melancholy efficiency of someone trying to keep her mind busy. When she saw him, she froze where she stood, as if preparing to hear a sentence. "Last night I told Layla that she is an extraordinary woman who deserves a man who can love her completely," Caden said, walking toward her. "I told her that man is not me because my heart already belongs to someone else." Isabella felt her legs grow weak. "And your family, my mother is wiser than I imagined. When I told her about you, about how you make me feel, she said something my father used to say, 'The heart recognizes its home when it finds it.' She wants to meet you officially. Caden, are you sure? Because there's no going back after this." In response, he knelt right there in the middle of the empty restaurant, taking from his pocket a small ring that had belonged to his grandmother, a simple but elegant solitaire, laden with family history. "Isabella Rossi, will you marry me? Will you build a life where our differences are our strength, where our traditions blend to create something new and beautiful? Will you be my wife, my partner, the mother of my children?" Isabella looked at him, the man who had risked everything to save her, who had chosen true love over social convenience, who was offering not just his heart, but his future. And she knew that all the struggles, all the fears, all the uncertainties had been worth it. "Yes," she whispered, then stronger. "Yes, I will." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Isabella knew she wasn't just accepting a marriage, but embracing a destiny that had always been hers, even when it seemed impossible. Caden stood up and kissed her, and in that kiss was all the promise of a love that had overcome social barriers, cultural differences, and their own fears. 6 months later, Amira Al-Hamad walked through the oasis, now owned by Caden and Isabella, watching with maternal pride as her daughter-in-law organized a special dinner to celebrate their 1-month wedding anniversary. Isabella wore a dress that blended Arab elegance with American modernity, and when she smiled at Caden across the room, Amira saw what she had always known she would see. Two people who had found in their love not only personal happiness, but a way to honor the past while building a completely new future. "Son," she said to Caden as he approached, "you chose well. She didn't just become part of our family, she made it stronger." And so, in the vibrant heart of New York City, where different cultures meet and mix every day, Caden and Isabella proved that true love knows no social boundaries, that traditions can expand without breaking, and that sometimes the best destinies are the ones we are brave enough to build with our own hands. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.